My name is Travis Walton. I was just a regular guy, a lumberjack from Arizona with a steady job and a normal life. But all of that changed on the evening of November 5th, 1975. We were 7 men in the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest, finishing up a long day of clearing brush. Mike Rogers was our team lead, and we were pushing to meet a federal contract deadline. As the sun dipped behind the trees and we loaded into the truck to head home, a strange light caught our eyes between the pines. We thought it might be a crashed helicopter or a forest fire, but as we got closer, we saw this metallic disc hovering silently about 30 feet above the ground. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen, glowing with a pulsing blue hue. It wasn't moving. It was just watching us. There was a silence between us. The truck came to a stop. Nobody spoke for a moment, transfixed by the glowing object ahead. Curiosity overwhelmed my fear. Without saying a word, I opened the door and stepped out. My boots crunched on the gravel road. I walked toward the light. The air felt charged, like the sky before a storm. The disc hummed with energy, not audibly, but in the pressure in my chest and the buzz in my ears. Then bam, a blinding flash of light hit my chest, and I was thrown through the air like a rag doll. The next thing I knew, I was lying on a cold, metallic table. The air was sterile. I was wrapped in some kind of plastic film. My chest ached. My limbs wouldn't move. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. Surrounding me were 3 beings, short, gray-skinned, with bulbous heads and jet black eyes. They didn't speak. They just stared. And in that silence, my terror became absolute. One moved toward me with something in its hand. A tool, a syringe. I didn't wait to find out. My instincts took over. I grabbed a nearby metal rod and swung it wildly. The being scattered and left the room. Then another one entered, taller, human-like, blonde, wearing a tight blue suit. He didn't speak, but he gestured for me to follow him. I was trembling, but I had no choice. He led me through winding corridors with walls that shimmered like living tissue. I heard distant mechanical hums and strange clicking sounds. Finally, he brought me into a room where others like him placed a mask over my face. Then nothing. I woke up on a cold road outside Heber, Arizona. 5 days had passed. My clothes were the same, but I was filthy, bruised, and disoriented. When I stumbled into a phone booth and called my brother, I had no idea that the world had been looking for me. The aftermath was a media circus, news crews, law enforcement, skeptics, believers. My 6 coworkers had already reported what they saw. 5 of them passed polygraph tests. 1 refused the test and left angry or scared to speak. People thought they were crazy, or worse, murderers. I passed my own lie detector. Doctors examined me. No major injuries, but signs of severe stress and dehydration. I couldn't eat for days. I was plagued by nightmares, vivid, disturbing images of unfamiliar stars and lights. Skeptics tried to tear my story apart. CSI Cop, a skeptical organization, dismissed my account, but I never wavered. I didn't want fame. I didn't want a movie deal. I just wanted to understand what happened. Eventually, I wrote a book, Fire in the Sky. In 1993, it was adapted into a film. Hollywood exaggerated parts, of course. The abduction scene was far more violent than what I experienced, but at its core, the truth remained. Something took me that night, something not from this earth, and I came back changed. My name is Sarah. I was 10 years old when my life changed forever. It was a blistering hot September day in 1994, and I was just a student at aerial school in Rua, Zimbabwe. A typical Friday, or at least, it was supposed to be. Our teachers were in a staff meeting, which left over 60 children outside unsupervised during an extended recess. We were laughing, playing tag, running in the field completely unaware that something extraordinary was about to happen. I was with my best friend, Lisa, near the edge of the playground, close to the thick brush that bordered the property. That's when it appeared. A bright light shot down from the sky. Not like lightning, not like anything we had ever seen. It was silent, no hum, no wind, no sound at all. It hovered above the trees for a moment, then slowly began to descend. Lisa pointed first. "Look," she shouted. Dozens of heads turned. Some kids ran. Some froze. I stood in awe. The object was metallic, circular, and small, maybe 20 feet in diameter. It didn't make any noise, but it glowed. It landed or rather, hovered just above the ground near the tree line where no one ever dared to play. Then, something stepped out. It was small. Not a child, but definitely not an adult. Its skin was pale gray, almost translucent. Its head was large and oval-shaped, eyes massive and black. It wore something dark and tight, like a suit made of shadows. And then, it looked directly at me. I felt something in my head. Not words, not thoughts, images. Destruction, fire, oceans swallowing cities, trees burning. I felt sadness. I felt fear. And somehow, I knew this being was trying to communicate a warning. Lisa grabbed my hand. "Did you see that?" she whispered, tears in her eyes. "Yes," I said. "He's afraid for us." Other kids began to scream. One boy dropped to the ground, eyes wide and body trembling. Another stood motionless, tears streaming down his cheeks. We were all seeing different parts of the same nightmare transmitted directly into our minds. The being turned back toward its ship. It moved like it was floating, not walking. The craft lifted silently into the air, then vanished into the sky without a trace. When the teachers returned, we tried to tell them, we begged them to believe us. But they laughed. They said it was a prank, a collective imagination. But how do 60 children imagine the same thing? Journalists arrived the following Monday, investigators, UFO researchers, and most importantly, Dr. John Mack, a Harvard psychiatrist. He sat with us one by one. He listened. He watched our body language. He asked questions. He said we were telling the truth. He said, "Children, that young can't fabricate trauma like that. Especially not in unison." We drew pictures. Every drawing was almost identical: saucer-shaped craft, tall grass, a small figure with giant eyes. Years have passed. I moved away from Zimbabwe. Lisa and I still speak occasionally, but we don't bring it up. Not because we forgot, but because we can't forget. It lives in the back of our minds like a scar you learn to live with, but never really heal from. In 2020, a documentary called The Phenomenon aired our story again. The world watched our childhood faces speak about that day. Still serious, still solemn, and still, some people didn't believe us. But I know what I saw. We all do. The town of Clare Hollow, North Dakota, is barely a pinprick on a map. One main road, a gas station, a diner, a grain elevator, and one old house that everyone knows, a crumbling two-story white farmhouse at the edge of the wheat fields, just past Route 14. Every local child knows the story. Never look into the top left window after midnight, because if you see him, he sees you too. In 2016, Alyssa Browning, a 33-year-old school teacher from Chicago, moved to Clare Hollow to escape her chaotic city life. She'd inherited the farmhouse from her late aunt, a woman she barely knew. The will came with one condition: Alyssa had to live in the house for at least 1 year. The locals weren't welcoming, they weren't rude, just hesitant. When she'd mention her address at the diner or post office, people would fall silent. Some would change the subject. Others would say things like, "Hope you're a heavy sleeper." That house ain't been kind to folks. But Alyssa was practical. She didn't believe in ghost stories. She just wanted quiet. She got more than she bargained for. On her first night in the house, Alyssa noticed something strange. The top left window, in what used to be her aunt's bedroom, faced the driveway. She kept catching glimpses of movement in the reflection of her car windshield. Just a flicker, like someone was walking past the window. But every time she looked up, nothing. She figured it was her nerves. Until 2:17 a.m., she woke with a start. No noise, no dreams, just a sudden, overwhelming sense of being watched. She got up, walked through the hallway, and turned to glance at the old bedroom. The door was open, and standing inside the room, facing the window, was the dark silhouette of a man. He didn't move, didn't turn, just stood there, as if staring out into the wheat fields. Alyssa gasped. The figure vanished. The next morning, Alyssa tried to rationalize it. Stress, shadow tricks, fatigue, but she couldn't explain what happened that afternoon. The bedroom door wouldn't close. It refused to latch, like something kept pushing it open. She tried locking it, using a chair. Nothing worked. Then, as she walked back down the stairs, her phone buzzed. A message, from her own number. "Don't block the window. He doesn't like that." She dropped the phone. That night, she left the bedroom door open, and again at exactly to 17 a.m., she woke up. The same figure, same window. But this time, the man had turned halfway, facing into the room. Still unmoving, still silent. Alyssa blinked, and he vanished again. She finally asked the local librarian, an old woman named Edith, if she knew anything about the house. Edith didn't answer, just handed her a faded manila folder from a locked drawer. Inside were newspaper clippings from the 1940s to the 1980s, reports of disappearing livestock, children sleepwalking and going missing, fires that started only in that top left room, witnesses claiming to see a man standing at the window during storms. One article stood out. From 1952, local farmer hangs himself in bedroom. Notes claim the window, "1 T let me leave." His name was Eli Marlowe. And in the photo attached to the article, Alyssa saw it, the same face she'd seen in the silhouette. Same high cheekbones, same broad shoulders, same blank stare. Alyssa decided to stop sleeping in the house. She packed a bag and stayed in her car. That night, from the edge of her property, she looked up. At 17 a.m., the light in the top left window turned on. The silhouette stood there. This time, it was looking down, directly at her. She got chills as she watched him slowly raise one arm and wave. She drove away. For 3 nights, she stayed at a motel. No visions, no dreams. But on the 4th day, she returned to grab more of her belongings. When she opened the door, the house smelled like smoke. Black marks streaked the ceiling above the stairs. The top left window had been shattered from the inside, and written across the hallway wall, in what looked like soot, were 5 words, "You made me wait longer." Alyssa called a local paranormal researcher she found online. He arrived 2 days later, bringing strange equipment, EMF detectors, and a mirror. He set the mirror in the bedroom, facing the window, and told Alyssa to wait until 17 a.m. When the time came, she and the researcher sat in the hall, watching the mirror through the doorway. At first, they saw nothing. Then, slowly, a shape appeared in the reflection. The silhouette of the man, his face turned directly toward them. But here's where it gets disturbing. The man in the mirror was smiling, grinning wide, unblinking, and in the reflection, behind the man, was a second figure, Alyssa, standing directly behind him. But she hadn't moved. She was sitting beside the researcher. Then the mirror cracked. Alyssa left the town 2 days later, broke her lease, gave up her inheritance. She moved back to Chicago and never spoke of the house again. But 3 months later, her old neighbor from Clare Hollow emailed her. "The house has been torn down, but something's wrong. At 17 every night, my security cam still lights up the field. It's like someone standing where the window used to be. We can't see them, but the shadow's still there." My name is Tom Gorman, and what I am about to share isn't just a story, it's a nightmare that followed my family and me long we left that cursed land. In 1994, we bought what seemed like a dream property, a 195-acre ranch nestled in the hills of northeastern Utah. Quiet, remote, ideal for raising cattle and building a new chapter of our lives. But it didn't take long before that dream twisted into something darker. Even on our first day, something felt wrong. Heavy metal chains hung from old fence posts, the kind used to restrain something big. The doors had multiple locks, the windows had been reinforced. We laughed it off, thought the previous owners were paranoid. That first night, we heard noises, metallic screeches, distant voices, footsteps outside our windows, too heavy to be animal, too erratic to be human. I grabbed my shotgun and walked the perimeter. Nothing. No prints. No movement, just silence. Then the lights began. At first, they appeared in the distance, blue, red, and white orbs hovering above the fields. They would zip across the property with inhuman speed, sometimes vanishing midair. One night, a glowing blue orb hovered just 20 feet from our house. When our dogs chased it, they vanished into the woods. We found their bodies the next day, mangled and burned. Circles of scorched earth surrounded them. And that was only the beginning. Our cattle started dying. We'd find them gutted, organs removed with surgical precision, eyes gone, ears sliced off, tongues missing. No blood, no tracks, no predators. One of our best heifers was found lying in the middle of a field, completely drained of blood, its spine surgically separated. Another had been dropped from above, bones shattered like it had fallen from a great height. I tried to install cameras. They'd glitch or burn out as soon as the orbs appeared. One even exploded. One evening, we spotted something by the tree line. A creature 7 feet tall, hunched, walking on 2 legs, with red glowing eyes. When I raised my rifle and fired, it didn't flinch. It turned, stared at us, and vanished into thin air. No sound, no tracks, just gone. We began to sleep in shifts, keeping watch with loaded weapons. We boarded windows, installed motion sensors. Still, the voices returned, whispers in a language we didn't understand. Sometimes, we'd wake up with all the cupboard doors open, the furniture rearranged. My wife swore someone or something was walking through the halls at night. Then I saw the portal. It was a rip in the sky, like a tear in the fabric of reality. Through it, I saw a world I couldn't describe. A desolate landscape. Mountains of black glass, red skies, and flying through it something with wings, watching me. Then, it closed, as if it had never been. Neighbors told us stories. The Ute tribe had long called the area forbidden. They believed it was haunted by skinwalker shapeshifters capable of unspeakable evil. I didn't believe in legends, not then, but now. Now I don't know. In 1996, we finally broke. We sold the ranch, moved far away, but the nightmare stayed. The property was bought by a man named Robert Bigelow, a billionaire with a deep interest in the paranormal. He brought in scientists, military personnel, and researchers. Even they couldn't explain what they found. Cameras malfunctioned. Equipment exploded. Some investigators reported seeing faceless creatures. One physicist left the property and refused to return, claiming he was followed by a black mass that appeared in his home hundreds of miles away. They called it Skinwalker Ranch. Today, it remains under surveillance, protected by armed guards and high fences. But those who've been there know you can defense out the unknown, and once you've seen what we saw, you never sleep the same again. My name is Jim Paniston. In 1980, I was a staff sergeant in the United States Air Force, stationed at RAF Woodbridge in Suffolk, England. What I witnessed one cold December night, and what I physically touched with my own hand, altered my entire perception of reality and of our place in the universe. It was December 26th, around 3 a.m. A radio call came in. Strange lights had been seen descending into the nearby Rendlesham Forest. My first thought, maybe a downed aircraft, or perhaps a covert Soviet operation. Either way, protocol demanded we investigate. I gathered my gear and met up with Airmen John Burroughs and Edward Kabansik. We moved quickly, our boots crunching over the frozen soil, breath visible in the biting cold. The deeper we went into the forest, the more unnatural the silence became. No animals, no wind, just stillness. Then we saw it. Through the trees, an intense pulsating glow. As we approached, a metallic craft emerged from the darkness, triangular, smooth, resting silently on tripod-like legs. It was approximately 10 feet long and maybe 8 feet high. The surface shimmered like black glass, interrupted only by glowing red, blue, and white lights that blinked in an unnatural rhythm. Burroughs and Kabansik stayed back. Something intuition, or fear paralyzed them. I, however, moved forward, notebook in hand, adrenaline numbing my caution. When I reached the craft, I saw symbols etched into its hull. Not English, not any language I'd seen. They looked like hieroglyphs, mathematical and ancient, yet strangely familiar. I placed my hand on the surface. The moment my skin made contact, a jolt of energy surged through me. I couldn't move. My mind exploded with images, symbols, coordinates, and unfamiliar star maps. Binary code streamed through my thoughts like a waterfall of data. Then, just as suddenly, it was over. The object lifted silently into the air, tilted at an angle, and vanished in a flash of white light. We were left standing in the clearing, breathless, confused, and terrified. Back at base, we were told to write reports. Our notes were collected. Some were never returned. I detailed everything in my logbook, including the strange symbols. I even recreated the binary data I had seen when I touched the craft. The next morning, we returned to the site. There were 3 indentations in the ground where the landing legs had rested. Geiger counters picked up elevated radiation levels at those exact spots. The tops of nearby trees were scorched. In the days that followed, I was plagued with visions, nightmares of planetary alignments, of Earth viewed from space. I kept seeing the same sequence of ones and zeros over and over again. Years later, those binary codes were analyzed. They translated into geographical coordinates, 7 points on Earth, all significant ancient sites: the Great Pyramid of Giza, the Nazca Lines in Peru, the Temple of Apollo in Greece. What kind of technology could do that? What kind of intelligence could communicate through thought? Despite multiple witness testimonies, official documents, and physical evidence, the event was dismissed by the British and US governments. They said it was a misidentified lighthouse, a weather balloon, optical illusions caused by stress. But we know better. Colonel Charles Halt, who led the investigation days later, recorded audio during his own encounter in the forest. The tape, still available today, captures his voice trembling as he describes lights moving between the trees and beaming down from above. Whatever we encountered that night was not man-made, it was not terrestrial, and I still feel the imprint it left on me physically, mentally, spiritually. I am not the same man I was before I touched that craft, and I've thus spent the rest of my life trying to understand what it was trying to tell me. My name is Thomas. It's not the name I was born with, but it's the one they gave me after I joined. After I gave up everything, my job, my name, my family, my soul. I was in my 20s in 1994, spiraling. My life felt hollow, no direction, no purpose. One night, I wandered into a small conference in Santa Fe. A man named Marshall Applewhite was speaking. They called him Do. He spoke of ascension, of evolution, of Earth's coming recycling. He told us that the planet was a garden, a nursery, and that it was about to be cleared. But those who were ready, those who had been called, could escape. He told us there was a ship. He said it traveled behind the Hale-Bopp comet, hidden from human eyes, and that it was waiting for the chosen few to join it, and I believed him. Over the next year, I was brought deeper into the group. We lived simply, uniformly, matching black clothing. No sex, no alcohol, no money. We cut ties with our families, gave away our possessions, erased our past. They called us the class. We were told that our human bodies were vessels, vehicles, they said, and that to ascend, we had to shed all attachments to Earth. Dew claimed he was the second coming of Jesus in alien form, that he and his partner, T, were our guides to the next level. Every day, we watched tapes, rehearsed procedures, we memorized phrases and rituals. We took vows of purity, and we waited. Then the comet came. March 1997. Dew called at the closing of the gate. A small window in time. Our exit. We gathered in a rented mansion in Rancho Santa Fe, California. Quiet, gated, isolated. He told us it was time. We filmed farewell messages, smiling, calm. Some joked, others cried tears of joy. We believed we were leaving behind a dying world to board a ship that would take us to salvation. Then we ate a final meal, vegetarian lasagna and pudding. It was silent, reverent. Afterward, we went to our rooms in small groups. Each group followed the same process, a drink laced with phenobarbital and vodka, then a plastic bag over the head, then the weight. One by one, we lay down in bunk beds, dressed identically, black shirts, sweatpants, new Nike sneakers, and a patch on the arm that read Heaven's Gate Away Team, and one by one, they died. I was in the last group. My closest friend was beside me. I remember him lying down, pulling the purple shroud over his face, and whispering, "See you on the ship." But something inside me screamed. I stood up. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I stumbled out the door, down the stairs, out into the street. I ran for miles. I don't even remember how far. I just remember collapsing in a stranger's yard, sobbing. 3 days later, the world discovered what happened. 39 bodies. Perfectly arranged, peaceful, identical. I should have been the 40th. Today, I live in anonymity, a different name, a different life. But not a day goes by that I don't see their faces, hear their voices, wonder what might have been. And sometimes sometimes I still look up at the night sky and wonder if maybe, just maybe, they were right. If you made it this far, subscribe to Mr. Horror Stories for more terrifying true encounters, real-life mysteries, and unsolved nightmares. Thanks for watching.